implement the trash controls where, unfortunately, the threat of firestorms may be their highest priority in their local planning processes. Consider incorporating more flexibility into the trash amendments so that the local communities and watersheds can be part of the conversation on setting their own highest priorities to benefit their watersheds. This alternative approach would allow local buy-in to the solutions and ensure that scarce resources are well spent. As I read the trash amendments, there is flexibility in track 2, but this flexibility is taken away by requiring a monitoring program. Trash monitoring programs are expensive and result in data that is difficult to interpret and may outweigh the benefits of its collection. Consider modifying the current tracks to include local control by established watershed groups under MS4 permits that require prioritization of water quality problems or conditions based on local trash assessment data. San Diego MS4s have collected trash data for over 5 years, and these data should be considered in crafting a good program. And I will provide language to help with that in our comments. I'll just give you one example of what we face in San Diego River. Recently, our Region 9 board invited our San Diego River watershed co-permittees to present an informational item on how we are addressing trash. The take-home message from our board was that we are actually doing a good job in meeting our responsibilities in minimizing trash impacts. Our local NGO partner, the San Diego River Park Foundation, testified that based on their quantitative trash evaluations at 30 locations in the San Diego River for over a number of years, illegal encampments located in the Arundo along the river bottom and on the banks of the river contribute over 70% of the trash found in the San Diego River. Unfortunately, no number of catch basin inserts will alleviate this situation. In San Diego, we are under a cutting-edge permit with 10 watershed management areas. Each watershed is developing their independent strategic plans to solve problems with public input. Emphasis of the programs will be to develop strategies to address the highest water quality condition. So this will allow us to focus our efforts on where it matters. Trash is not typically our highest priority. However, if trash amendments are adopted as currently drafted, we will, in essence, have a new highest priority. And this will thwart our watershed planning being done at a local scale. So in quick summary, we request that you do extend the comment period by 56 days to allow adequate time to brief and engage our elected officials. Remove commercial land uses in isolated rural areas that are in the Phase 1 MS4 footprint really out of convenience, not necessity. Modify the current tracks to minimize disconnected planning at the state and local levels and prevent competing priorities by respecting local rigorous planning processes. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I hear in your comments the concern of a new priority and that sort of thing. I'm hoping as you work on your comments, you could coach us in terms of how we are crafting the policy in track to allow the watershed solutions to work through the proper level of effort. Because I really respect that point. This feels like a new thing out of the blue, and yet I think you know, as a watershed convener, as I have experience in doing that as well, trash is part of the overall vision, and I hope you can help coach us in a way that keeps trash, you know, as a legitimate concern, but that you can address it at the right level of effort at the local level.
I'll try.
And I just wanted to add, you can go ahead and sit down, just for the board members to know, I was at the San Diego meeting that was referenced by Joanne, and in the statement that 70% of the trash in the San Diego River is coming from homeless encampments. And another piece of that was that there had been an effort on the part of the trail maintenance people and others to clean out the Arundo, and they actually found that a lot of the homeless, they didn't disappear, they just moved to other places, but not at the river. And so it is a very, very complex issue, and I wanted to ask all the staff as well as John, you know, how if homelessness is, particularly in urban areas, a significant contributor, how, what is your thinking on what we should be doing?
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in here because I think we need to be very careful here. We don't, let me give it by way of example. We recognize that the litter in the street is coming from people. Our policy still regulates the municipalities that have control over the storm drainage system and is not going directly at each individual litter. That is unfair in one instance, but that's true. Our approach is that the landowner, the person that owns, is responsible for the land, is responsible for the activities on that land, even if it happens to be homeless encampments. And if that's the litter problem, then the direction needs to be through the landowner. We have a mechanism in place for WDRs for addressing that. But somewhat like the discussion that Dart's had, which was if you ban styrofoam, you get another thing. If you move the homeless, you move them. You're not eliminating that problem of the litter that they produce. You might be moving it from directly in the waterway, which I don't think is a bad idea, to a different location in the watershed. So it is not a simple solution.
That's a good discussion, and it's a funny coincidence. We didn't do our board member reports, but I have a report on this issue that we'll do next board meeting. But I was thinking about it, and I saw some parallels, I think, and you can say I'm wrong, but when we take on the tough issue of marijuana cultivation and how it's not a straightforward fit with our regulatory program, and yet we are grappling with it and working with folks carefully and thinking about it. I think addressing homelessness and trash and sanitary risk, there's bacteria issues too, is a complex problem that we need to undertake very carefully, working with local communities, but we should not shy away from it. And thank you for reminding us about there is a connection as far as who owns the land, and that there's a place in our trash policy, I think, for that as you've drafted it. Thank you.
Dana Booth, followed by Cheryl Hunn.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but okay.
Oh, you're great.
My name is Dana Booth. I'm here on behalf of the County of Sacramento and the City of Elk Grove, and to the extent that I was a representative within one of the stakeholder meetings for the Sacramento Stormwater Quality Partnership, I'll speak to that. So many things have come up today, of which I agree with like 99% of them, and have some other things on my own. That's not what I came up here to talk about. I would like to state, though, that there are some discrepancies between what Mr. Bishop just said with regards to private property owner responsibility and what's said in here that basically puts it on the municipality. Those are some issues that will probably need to be dealt with. There's also, well, as part of the stakeholder meeting back in April of 2013-ish kind of a thing, we were provided one sheet of paper that had a column of track 1 on one side and a column of track 2 on the other side and some time frames, and we discussed those, and it was great. Haven't heard a thing since. Much to my surprise, I've received this, and I'm having a hard time getting through all of it because there's been significant changes between then and now with regards to the things that surround those two tracks, shall we say. What I'm here for is more time. I would like to be able to provide good comments, constructive comments, comments that help this process move forward without getting us cut off at the knees. I think there's really good stuff in here, but I think in attempting to mash some things together at times, it's gotten off track. For example, I believe that the definitions, in order to try to incorporate the pre-production plastics, which is a great thing, also include sawdust. So it is, by definition, sawdust will be included, and by objective, someone walking down the American River Parkway that sees a piece of sawdust, that's trash in excess of a beneficial use. Okay? The accumulation language is great, but when you pull back to Appendix A, the table there says non-contact recreation, any trash impairs the beneficial use. So a piece of sawdust, there you go. Granted, that's way off topic or way overboard on things, but those are the types of things that we need to just fix the language, and it's going to take a little bit of time to do it constructively. I'd like more time.
Cheryl, followed by Kurt Kruger.
Hello. Hello, I'm Cheryl Hune with the City of Sacramento. I'm our Stormwater Program Manager. The city has also submitted a written request to the board requesting extension. Like many of the others that have commented today, this is a significant regulation that will require significant capital cost and increased O&M costs for all of the municipalities that will be regulated by this. It's important that everybody has time to engage and understand this regulation and how it will impact their community and provide solutions and comments. So we're requesting an additional 60 days to provide written comments. Also, just one general comment. We're still working on our way through the policy, but one of the board members had asked, what are people's thoughts of Track 2? And just as we understand it now, we do have concerns that the way it is written doesn't feel like a viable option. The performance standard isn't well defined. The monitoring criterion plan isn't well defined. Just saying that will be worked out in our permit doesn't make it appear to be a viable option for municipalities. So I think we need to define that process a little bit better. Thank you.
Kurt will be followed by Craig Johns.
Good afternoon, or almost afternoon. My name is Kurt Kruger. I'm with Contec. Contec is a manufacturer of stormwater products. And I want to thank you, members of the board and members of staff, for not just this effort, but the effort you've done in other areas of water quality. I think it's made a tremendous difference to the state I live in. Contec is a manufacturer of CDS units. CDS units are structural trash capture units. There are several thousand CDS units installed nationwide, most for water quality, but every one of them is a 100% trash capture unit. In California, there's over 1,000 units installed going back 15 years, many in Southern California. My focus is Northern California. I live in the Bay Area, and I have personally been involved in the trash capture program that the MERP provides for, the C10 requirements. Those requirements required area cities to protect about 6,000 acres by this summer. I've personally been involved in designing and installing units that have protected 2,000 of those 6,000 acres. So I have a fair amount of experience with all of this. A couple comments. The Track 1 and Track 2 both have the same time frame. The Track 2, where you're putting in structural systems, requires analysis, engineering, installation. There's an involved process, and the 10-year time frame is reasonable. The Track 1 involves strategies that are much more quickly and easily implemented if the cities choose to take that route. So my suggestion is for Track 2 implementation, you reduce the time frame to 7 years. That would also provide some added incentive to go with a more effective 100% capture. Second comment has to do with the certification process. When LA first began its certification process, and I think John might confirm this, there was an operational experience requirement as well as just design confirmation. Well, it's my understanding that today's requirement just involves evaluating designs, evaluating it on paper. That's what the Bay Area did with their approved unit process. Well, in the real world, in an engineering environment, just having something work on paper isn't good enough. I don't think anybody in this room would get on an airplane that had been designed on paper but hadn't had a test flight. You wouldn't do it. Even Boeing test flights everything before they actually give it to the airlines. So here we're relying on, or could rely on, just a paper design to demonstrate that something's going to work to reduce trash for the state. I'm suggesting that any certification process include operational confirmation that whatever product is proposed actually works. All of the other states that do stormwater certification processes have in-ground field testing requirements. I came up with 2 more comments based on other things I heard today. Sean spoke with board member Dudok about the San Francisco program. I'm very familiar with that program, and I can offer some comments in a lot more detail than I would today as far as exempting that and modifying it so it would fit in with what you're trying to do here. I'd be happy to work with staff and offer my suggestions. And then Jeff Brousseau mentioned the financing issues. This can be an expensive proposition. Well, I'll go one step further. For the structural requirements, most of the medium and small cities simply are not equipped to effectively handle it. They have to subcontract out. I've seen lots of mistakes made because they're not staffed to do this properly. The big cities seem to be okay with it. My company, Contact, is exploring a P3 approach, the public-private partnership, wherein we would offer design services through local engineering firms, installation, and probably more importantly, a financing option to spread the cost of these systems over 15, 20, 30 years, and may even include maintenance on an ongoing basis. So that's an option that may prove attractive in the long run. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, that's creative. So
Wait a second.
one thing is on the track 2, or maybe, or even track 1, if you have any suggestions in your comments, you know, on how there's a pathway for those type of creative solutions, you know, we'd be interested in, I think, in hearing about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Craig Johns, followed by Jeff, I believe it's Candid. Sindit.
Good afternoon now. Members of the board, my name is Craig Johns. I'm here today on behalf of the Partnership for Sound Science and Environmental Policy. First, I want to say we appreciate the work of your staff, very hard work of your staff, as well as this board in terms of bringing this policy forward and holding this workshop today, particularly after the marathon session yesterday. I'm sure you're all pretty tired. Most of us can appreciate how tiring those things can be, and so we appreciate your attention, and I'll try to be very brief. A couple of points that I'd like to make on behalf of our organization, and we were involved very heavily with the San Francisco Regional Board's development of their, ultimately their permit and following up in terms of their trash reduction strategy, as they call it down there. And a couple of things that became very apparent in that process is, first of all, there needs to be, and I would encourage staff to develop something like this for your policy should you go forward, a standard methodology for measuring trash. This is a big issue that came up at the San Francisco Water Board. It was actually highlighted earlier this morning. I believe it was Ms. Gordon from Clean Water Action referenced some statistics relative to some Bay Area community trash surveys that were done recently. And I believe the number she used was something north of 50%, or maybe it was 2/3 of the trash that was assembled or taken out in their trash surveys came from polystyrene foam types of takeout single-use products. That is a number which doesn't come close to most of the studies that have been done on a nationwide, as well as San Francisco's 2007 and 2008 trash studies, which showed that that actual number is closer to about 1%. And the reason why we sometimes are crossing, if you will, as ships in the night, talking about how to count trash, is there hasn't been a specific methodology that's been adopted. And so depending on how you count trash, whether you use a volumetric approach or a piecemeal approach or a weight approach, that number and that percentage is going to be different. So if you're talking about a track 2 type of a system here for this policy, it's going to be imperative that the board come up with something to tell the regional boards how to go about developing standards for measuring trash, for counting trash and measuring trash. We also believe that it's imperative that the monitoring requirements that would be imposed in track 2 also be applied to track 1. I'm not really following what staff's rationale would be not to have monitoring requirements. It seems to me that cities and particularly taxpayers would want to know how good the track 1 devices that are being put in by their cities are working, and the only way to demonstrate that is by monitoring for that. So we would strongly suggest that all monitoring requirements, if you want to show that track 2 is accomplishing the same thing as track 1, it seems to me you need to have track 1 monitoring data as well. Lastly, funding track 1. This is sort of the stinky elephant in the room wherever we go. We recognize that city and municipal budgets are tight. It's very difficult to come up with additional funds, and certainly through the state the legislature and or grants were talked about earlier. And this process really, I think, strongly suggests that the folks like Mr. Kruger's outfit and others, there are many of these devices, these track 1 types devices, full capture, partial capture, and otherwise, many companies that make these things. And they can get together, I would suggest, with the municipalities and with the waste management type companies of the world to talk about how we can use our garbage franchise process to possibly increase the garbage franchise, if you will, for a particular city to include both the installation of these track 1 types of devices, but also how the maintenance for those devices are going to then be done over the course of the life of that garbage franchise contract. Those, incidentally, unlike regular stormwater fees and others, would not fall under the Prop 218 prohibition. Garbage franchise fees do not. So cities could easily, those who have private garbage franchises at least, could easily develop very creative ways to get these types of trash capture devices put into their communities. And I've got to tell you, I was shocked when I was reading the staff report and the economic suggestion that in a city or community that I live in, the annual fee for me on a per capita basis would be $10 roughly a year to get to zero trash. I, for one, would be happy to pay that. I suspect that most Californians would be if they were asked. So I appreciate the opportunity to present that information today, and we'll be submitting some comments in the next couple weeks.
Thank you.
That was a creative idea, and I've heard that talked about. I don't know if staff wants to comment on the idea of working with, is there a place for us to work with Cal Recycle in this regard, you know, recognizing there's a solid waste management component to this, and some institutional reworking and incentives and that sort of thing.
So we've had discussions with Cal Recycle and will likely continue. This is a slightly different issue that Craig Jones was discussing, which sounds interesting, is that if you defined as part of your trash pickup that taking things out of your full capture devices as part of your trash contract with your contracted waste haulers, that's a different idea that I've never heard before, but it's worth thinking about.
Jeff, who will be followed by Maudie Lee.
Thank you, board members, for hosting today's workshop and your public process. My name is Jeff Condit. I'm the program manager with the Monterey Regional Stormwater Management Program along the Central Coast. The jurisdictions I represent are committed to protecting our water bodies from pollution, of course. We also are asking for a time extension to allow us to better understand the implications of the trash amendment and engage our stakeholders. Second, we're unclear on the capital expenditures and operations and maintenance implications for our jurisdictions, and we're still trying to engage that and understand that better. We're interested in a dedicated funding stream that would assist our jurisdictions, of course. And again, this is a new priority for us, so we're hoping to just understand how to do this. Also, we're unclear on the feasibility of the trash management BOPs on the Central Coast. particularly with regard to the vegetation debris, a high concentration, such as leaves and pine needles, and will this lead to localized flooding? Those are things that we're trying to better understand within our catch basins and curb inlets. We are a supporter of source control measures, and we feel this is a logical approach, and thank you for your time.
Before you go sit down, what do you think of the idea that just surfaced about adding or about municipalities considering part of their contract with their waste management folks, adding the idea of keeping the trash, cleaning out the trash from the trash collectors?
I mean, is that something we
property.
could explore further? When you say residents are going to agree to a $10 increase or taxing?
No, that's not the part I'm talking about. I'm
okay.
talking about the working out an agreement with your trash system, that whoever you've hired to do trash maintenance for your cities or for your residential and other areas.
I think we'd be interested in exploring that further. I think it would depend on our existing contracts and what that would engage, and we'd love to work with staff to try to figure out those types of solutions.
Maudie, followed by Sue Vang.
Good afternoon, board members. Apologies for my chicken scratch. It's actually Mandy Lee.
Oh,
I'm here on behalf of the California Retailers Association. We represent all the national chain retailers. So we have thousands of store locations across the state. We want to applaud the board for this undertaking. It's a big deal, and it seems that given the breadth of comments and the breadth of stakeholders that have weighed in today, more time is certainly warranted for the development of this policy to ensure that it doesn't negatively impact local governments, the industry, et cetera, while getting the state towards this goal of trash reduction. We too are concerned about an element of the trash proposal that will negatively impact our industry in addition to many others. And I guess just for the sake of brevity and to avoid repeating comments that have already been made, we would very much align our position with Mr. Shestek's organization in that we are very concerned about some of the regulatory source control measures that are proposed in Track 2, namely the effect that it would cause in encouraging local governments to ban single-use products, which as many other speakers have already stated, is not an effective and could be counterintuitive approach to trash reduction. A couple of points I want to make is the LA TMDL has been referenced many times today and sort of celebrated as a successful model. We would agree with that. We support structural controls that have been mentioned during the staff presentation as well as public comment. And obviously, we'll go into greater detail when we submit our comments to the board. But recognizing the high bar that's been set in the draft proposal, we also support certain institutional controls that have already been mentioned as well. Litter education, street sweeping, more trash cans, recycling efforts, et cetera. So we're very heartened by some of the comments that have been made by some of the previous speakers. We too advocate for a more aggressive approach, and the reason for that is if the state is going to spend this much time and this much resources in the development of this policy that's going to have potentially significant impacts on a variety of stakeholders, we really ought to look at and focus on proven and effective measures that will reduce trash and litter as a way of enhancing our water quality. So thanks for your consideration, and we really look forward to working with the board.
Thank you, Maisie. Sue, and who will be followed by Kara Bush.
Good afternoon, board members. This is Sue Vang with Californians Against Waste. First, I just want to thank you for your work on this and your staff's work on this as well. I wanted to just say that we as an environmental group are very supportive of the intent of this policy to reduce waste. Wanted to echo the earlier concerns about the need to address this issue, and also wanted to recognize that the current draft may need some additional look and adjustments. For the sake of time, I'll be as brief as I can be as well. And I just wanted to very quickly reemphasize that, there has been some discussion on local bans, and that this morning there was discussion about how effective they have been. I think it was Kirsten James from Heal the Bay that mentioned how they've been working in the Santa Cruz area in reducing waste related both to EPS and bags. And just wanted to say in terms of recycling efforts, Californians Against Waste is a group that works on recycling and waste reduction, and we do support recycling efforts, but we do also recognize that there are some products that recycling hasn't been very effective with. And just as a very brief example with bags, under AB 2449, there was a statewide collection infrastructure, which basically put a recycling bin in every large grocery store, increasing the access. There was outreach efforts that was included with that, and yet the state CalRecycle reported only a less than 5% recycling rate. That was their last reported rate. So just in summary, and we will of course also provide comments and provide additional information on this, but just wanted to thank you for your work, and have a good day.
Thank you. Kara, followed by Stephanie. Raina Heiston.
Board members, Kara Bush with the California Restaurant Association. In the interest of saving time, I'd like to align our comments with the comments previously stated by ACC and the Retailers Association. We look forward to submitting formal comments by the August 5th deadline, and definitely appreciate all of your work on these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie is our last speaker.
Vice Chair Spivey Weber and board members and staff, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Stephanie Raina Highstand. I am the Water Resources Analyst too for the City of Tracy, running the stormwater and water conservation programs. I fully agree with some of the municipalities that have been up here and other agencies with their comments. And there's actually 3 things that I would like to also add for your consideration. One of them is that there are a couple of programs that are going on here within our region, Region 5. The Delta Regional Monitoring Program is one of them that we are currently striving towards some water quality objectives, and this is going to directly affect whether or not municipalities are going to be able to participate in that program. This trash amendment will definitely put us, any funds that we would have that would go towards that program will have to be put towards these objectives that you guys have set forward. Also, the region-wide permit. It is a water quality objective-based permit, and it was placed, and we've been working to express that it would be a water quality according to your watershed area. You would choose your top 3 water quality constituents, and you would work towards working with those 3 instead of spreading money out everywhere. You would be utilizing money to put into those specific water quality objectives for your watershed. And with this trash amendment, it makes it so that we have to now put money towards trash where we may not have a trash issue. The City of Tracy, one of our issues that we're going to have is we have storm pump stations. The storm pump stations currently work for our trash. We eliminate trash in our detention basins, and having to do the full capture or the partial for trash, we don't have a trash problem. The money that we would be spending for our actual problems are now not going to be available. We will have to use it for the trash amendment. So I'd like to somehow iterate to you that it could be a problem for some places, that we're not going to be actually able to address the issues that we need to address because we're going to be put into a position where we have to meet this policy.
A question. what do you mean when you say that you do not have a trash problem, and how do you know that you do not have a trash problem?
Well, I'm not going to say that we don't specifically have a trash problem, but it's not our highest objective. We live in a community where we have mixed ag. All of our drainage is mixed ag, agriculture, and so we do have what we find is some pesticide issues and some other that would be greater served in a water quality perspective than trash.
And if you're effectively capturing trash at the pump stations, doesn't that sound to you like you could propose that as meeting
only
full
issue that-
capture requirements that are laid out in the policy now?
We've thought about that, but it doesn't meet that 5 mm screen. And if you try to put a 5 mm screen on one of those, you're going to have flooding issues.
No, that's one thing to work through.
Yeah. And then to address one of the things that was mentioned out here, having done a lot of surveys and a lot of outreach within our community, when we do survey our community, we ask them, would you be willing to pay $1, $2, $5, $10 towards water quality, flooding, that, and it always comes back with nothing, zero. They do not want to pay any more than what they're currently paying. And usually you get very rude comments about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No more blue cards? Well, we had a number of questions, particularly the time question. I think it'd be good to have a conversation about that. Did you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, that it stands out. It seems that, well, first of all, I just would like to compliment all the commenters for their clear statements of concern and willingness. Pretty much everyone said that they want to sit down and work with staff, which is terrific. And I'd like to compliment staff also for the outreach and all that you've done with the stakeholder meetings to get us this far. But it seems that people still want more time. And I suspect that that has to do with this is the opportunity where they finally have something in writing that says exactly how this would be implemented. And so it does seem that, in particular, the municipalities seem concerned about this. I think that more time seems to be warranted. And just wonder from staff, would that present any problem? I know you've got this implementation schedule, but is there, some reason why it would be a problem?
And actually, before you answer, I guess I would take a different perspective, and that is, this has been in the works for a very long time, and there's been a lot of stakeholder engagement. And yes, we would always want more time to fine-tune and perfect these issues. But first of all, I would like to hear from John in terms of the time, the planned activities, because as I understand it, this is a workshop, but we will have another hearing where we won't be taking action, and then yet another board consideration date. And so there's at least 2 additional opportunities to appear before us and provide comments, in addition to the written comment that will be submitted by people. So I am, I guess, of the opinion that, of course, I could change my mind upon seeing the actual written comments, but based on what I've heard today, based on the extensive process that staff has been engaged in, not only staff, but all the members of the advisory groups and everyone that's been involved. And I think we've heard a lot of really good offers to work with staff in the near term to fine-tune some of these areas. And from my perspective, I think all that's needed is a little bit fine-tuning of the proposals that have been put together by staff. So I, for one, would like for us to at least maintain the current schedule that is projected with respect to the upcoming hearing and then upcoming board consideration, and of course the written comment period that will be coming in.
All I wanted to add was that we did anticipate that this was a large policy, and we gave a 60-day written comment period as opposed to the 30-day that is required. But as people say, they get a chance to look at it, and it's a big deal. It would impact the schedule because the schedules are built around where times are due, and so the board should understand that we have right now set this up for a end of comment period on August 5th, which is also the hearing, so that we can essentially have the written and verbal comments that then we will go back and do responses to and make changes, because we do take the public comment period as a chance to refine our document. So we will be using that time to make those changes. We will also talk to people that submit those comments so that we understand if we need to make tweaks or something. That we are, my recollection is we're giving ourselves a month to do that. Is that correct? Do you all remember off the top of your head? Something to that effect, and then we'll have a board consideration. It would, what it would mean is that if we gave another 30 days, I would vehemently oppose another 60 days. I think that's not a realistic expectation. We've already given 60 days for this. It would just move everything back another month. And so we'd be talking about adoption in probably more like December timeframe by the time we get through this. So those are factual.
Well, the only thing I would add is that some of the changes seem to be pretty minor, but then the whole issue of the implementation, the monitoring on track 2, and any changes that would be included, and then more time for people to digest that. So whether that's done.
Yeah, but when those changes are made, it will be released for yet another round of comment.
Right. Right. And what amount of time at that point after the next round of revisions?
Do you remember offhand what we have in our schedule? I don't have it in front of me, so I can't remember what the public comment time frame we had for the proposed changes.
And my suggestion would be it would depend on the level and extensiveness of the changes that would be incorporated.
Yeah, we had a looser schedule because we didn't know the extent of the comments that we would receive. We were hopeful for like a 4 to 6 week time period, but we weren't sure.
Yeah, I think let's just say I think we've been extremely open and inclusive in terms of outreaching the stakeholder and providing opportunity for comment, especially on this particular item. And I don't expect that to change as we hopefully move forward towards board consideration.
Well, for what it's worth, I side more with Board Member Dodick on the schedule issue. You know, I think we've allowed a 60-day period, and I think this board has shown its nimbleness in terms of responding to comments in the last 3 months with 3 emergency regulations. And so, you know, I think we've shown we have the bandwidth to handle this kind of response and incorporation of meaningful, good, constructive input. So I'd say we move forward with the process as planned and be prepared to include more time if we collectively believe it's needed. But I would like to move forward.
And let me just be absolutely clear in my own mind as to what we're talking about in terms of opportunity for municipalities and others to influence the outcome. And right now they have until what is it? August 5th. Okay, right. August the 5th at noon to comment on what is there before them now. Those comments and the hearing information, which they can come in and present, will be then dealt with in response to comments, and then there will be a new draft that will come out that will reflect some level of change if warranted, and there will be a comment period on that. Is that correct? And that comment period would be 30 days or whatever we decided. Is that correct?
It really depends on the level of
change.
Okay. If
Okay.
it's minor changes that we end up making, we won't have a 30-day comment period because we don't for those. But if there are things in it that we think are need a more thorough review and response, we would add more time. But
Okay.
And I always stress this point, but it always gets lost, and that is that next round of public comment and public review would be for the changes that will be proposed, not to go back and revisit everything that has been proposed earlier. So that's why, another reason why we may not need a 30-day, or more comment period, because that public review period is only on the changes that are being proposed or will be proposed.
Yeah, and so I don't want to diminish Board Member Diadamo's points, though, that there are technical issues to work through. But just remind folks that we're at the plan level here. This is the ocean plan and the enclosed basin estuary plan. And yes, where the plan leads and implementation is very important. We need to be mindful of it. But we will have a lot of opportunity through regional board action, local watershed group work and prioritization to refine this policy. But this just established, as some commenters have said, this establishes a statewide program. Having experience in the Bay Area myself in trash control in a previous job where I worked at the regional board, and then knowledgeable about Los Angeles's experience, I believe we are not rushing into this. I believe we have over a decade of experience, lessons learned, and that we're overdue at the State Water Board to establish a direction on this topic of global importance. And what we do in California will have a global impact on an issue of global importance, as we learned earlier today. And it's just a matter of moving toward that throughout the state. And we've talked about where our authorities lie, and there's some things to work through as far as product formulation, to tackle this issue. I think we'll respond thoughtfully in terms of that input on where our authorities are. And I'll just remind folks too of some parallels. Product formulation. Remember the copper brake pad issue? We don't regulate how brake pads are made, but we participate in a dialogue about moving toward a less toxic alternative. There are parallels out there that we can use and not get into legal trouble, but work with partners to move the process forward. And I think we can do that with the product formulation issues. So anyway, that's a slippery slope, as we heard today in comments, and we want to hit that one right. So those are some thoughts.
And Bethany, would you? Because I think the difference between a plan and an implementation is a legal term, but it's very important in this discussion, because a plan is not implementation. Correct?
That's correct. So this will be amendment, upon adoption. If it's adopted, it would be amended into the ocean plan and the inland surface waters and enclosed basin estuaries plan. And then the obligation of the regional boards and the state boards at that point is to incorporate these provisions into their NPDES permits, Caltrans, MS4, IGP, CGP, and local MS4s as well. So you are absolutely correct that there's an additional public comment period at those levels of implementation as well. And some of the issues that came up here today, I think Sean mentioned backsliding, are more appropriate at the NPDES permit level for discussion. We can certainly discuss them here, but it's not an implication of the plan adoption. It would be an implication of a permit adoption at either the state or regional board level.
I'll just jump in and say, my preference is always to give more time, especially if it's just 30 additional days or something like that. But that's fine that, the board members, I'm the only one saying 30 additional days. So I would just, I'm always concerned about municipalities and, well, for others, but it seems that it was more the municipalities that were coming in. And so to the extent that those of you who are here or listening on the web, I would just suggest to take up staff on their willingness to sit down and work with folks. Perhaps it's just an issue of not really understanding the implications of the language and wanting to be, maybe spend more time to walk through. So, but I think that's fine. You've made a very good case that there's going to be many additional opportunities So just requesting some additional time, in particular the municipalities that raised concerns today.
If there are, does staff, either side, want to make any more comments?
Thank you very much.
Okay, then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.